So welcome everybody. It's great to see so many people joining. That is 3 o'clock, so I think I will make a start. Can I check? Can people hear me okay? Maybe. Thank you, David. Thank you. Okay. Yeah. That's great. So what I'm going to do today is give you an overview of the ARCHER service. For those that don't know me, my name is Lorna Smith and I will be the Deputy Director of the CSE service, that's the Computational Science and Engineering service for ARCHER2, and I'll explain what that is in some of the later slides. So, as I say, I'm going to give an overview of the ARCHER2 service from a user perspective. And then over the next few weeks and months, a number of my colleagues are going to give more detailed overviews of different aspects of the service. So for example, there'll be a webinar on the training part of the service, and there'll be a webinar around the eCSE programme. So that will all follow. Next week, my colleague Andy Turner will be giving an overview of the hardware of the ARCHER2 service, for example. Now, within ARCHER2, we have a commitment to run webinars. We would normally be running about these once a month. However, with the impact of COVID-19 and the difficulty around offering training, we will be running webinars more regularly. So we plan to run a webinar every week for the next 3 to 6 months. So within this talk, I'm going to give you a quick overview of who's involved, who the partners are in delivering the ARCHER2 service. And I'll have a single slide about the hardware, which, as I say, Andy will give more details next week. I'll talk about service provision. So this is how the service desk will work and how the different system support effort will work. Before moving on to CSE support, so how we handle in-depth queries, how we'll handle the eCSE, how we will support users within their work. I should say that I'll plan to take the majority of the questions at the end of the talk. So if you hold them till then, that'd be great. But if you have any burning questions, if you put them in the chat, then one of my colleagues, Claire, can keep an eye on that. Okay, so who's involved in ARCHER2? Well, UKRI are the funding body and managing agent for the service, and this includes both those in EPSRC and NERC's remit. EPCC is responsible for the accommodation and management of the service, so the housing of the ARCHER2 system and the management of this. Cray are providing the hardware and hardware support for the system. And we at EPCC will be providing what's called the service support and the computational science and engineering. I should also mention UOE HPCX Limited. UOE HPCX Limited is a wholly owned subsidiary of the University of Edinburgh, and the contract actually comes through UOE HPCX and the work is subcontracted to EPCC. So this is the main partners within the service. So in terms of the hardware, so the system is going to be 23 liquid-cooled HPE Cray Shasta mountain cabinets, and they're currently being built across in the US as we speak. This will give a total of 5,860 nodes, and within each node there's 2 AMD Rome processors. So as I say, Andy will give you an overview next week, but a rule of thumb is that this should give roughly 10 times performance across your application. Although obviously it will depend on the nature of your application as to what sort of performance improvement you see. So tune in next week for more information on this. Now the image at the bottom here will be the image on the front of the ARCHER2 system. So this is what will be on the panels of the system. You may also have noticed that the logo at the bottom of these slides is the ARCHER2 logo. It's very similar to the ARCHER logo, but has a slight update, and the colouring represents the new branding within UKRI. So, moving on to user support. One of the main aspects of user support is the service desk. So we have a single service desk that supports all aspects of service. So when a user submits a query, everything will come through this service desk. Doesn't matter if the query is relevant for Cray or for the CSE part, it will all come through this. The service desk will be staffed between 8 and 6 p.m. Monday to Friday, except on bank holidays. So there will always be somebody around to staff the service desk during the week. Queries can be submitted in a number of different ways. We find the vast majority of queries come through email, but you can also phone or use an online form, whatever suits. And once a query comes in, it will be classified as either level 1, 2, or 3, and an appropriate escalation route will be chosen. So, for example, relatively simple or quick queries will be handled by the operator on the service desk. Others will be escalated, for example, to part of the in-depth technical team, or potentially on to Cray if necessary. One of the things that I'll talk about throughout the presentation is the importance of user feedback and acting on user feedback to improve the service. So within the service desk, once you finish a query, you'll be invited to provide feedback on how we did. And any feedback we get will be used and will be monitored to try and improve the quality of the service we provide. This diagram is just an overview of how the service desk will work once your query comes in. It's quite a complicated diagram, but it shows you that your query it'll initially come into the service desk operator and then may be farmed out to different aspects of the service depending on the most appropriate person to handle it. You should also notice that Cirrus has been included here, one of the tier 2 services. And if, for example, your query comes in and is actually relevant for that service, it will naturally be passed to the relevant team. Okay, so underpinning a lot of this is something called SAFE. Now, for those that haven't heard of the SAFE is a bespoke application, web application that was developed by EPCC specifically to support large-scale HPC services, and it's been used very successfully within ARCHER and other previous services such as Hector. And this provides a range of different functionality. In particular, it's how we handle the query system. So as a series of tools to handle user queries, which allows us to measure how a query is handled. It allows us to assign a query and make sure that we deliver the appropriate service around queries to the user community. In addition to this, there's a series of self-service forms that allow you to look at how much budget you've got left, to create new accounts, to move budget around. This means it happens much more quickly than it might do if you were submitting a query and expecting and waiting for somebody to do it. SAFE holds data on all the different aspects of the service, so it'll hold information, for example, on how heavily utilised the ARCHER machine is, on the length of wait on queues, on what budgets where, and that can all be used for reporting purposes. As a user, you're also able to view any of the queries you have, or queries that you've had in the past, and view their status. So this has been upgraded, and we've had a redesign of of the look and feel of the safe to make sure it's as accessible as possible. This just gives you an example of what it will look like. In terms of system support, there's a team of people working to deploy and maintain and configure system software on the ARCHER2 hardware. So they're looking at things like implementing a flexible queuing system to ensure users are able to perform their science appropriately. So there's a range of queues will be implemented, and the option is there to make changes based on user feedback. It's important, obviously, to ensure the security of the service for all users, and that's a key aspect of system support. Systems are also looking at ensuring that the data on the service is properly backed up, moved off-site, and have a robust disaster recovery service in place. And finally, they're looking at things like minimising the length of maintenance sessions and ensuring they're properly planned and available to users. So I should mention, in order to provide the best quality service, we have put a lot of work into ensuring that the services are certified, are ISO 9001 certified. So we have a quality management system in place that's ISO 9001 accredited. And we use this to ensure that there's a series of processes in place to deliver the best quality service. Now, it's built on top of an ITIL service methodology. Those that work in IT service management will have come across ITIL, but this is a best practice, an industry best practice in service delivery. So we have our ISO 9001 accreditation, and we also have accreditation in ISO 27001, which is around information security. So there's robust procedures in place to ensure that we take information security and the handling of your data seriously. I mentioned feedback before, and feedback is very important in the ARCHER2 service. So we are looking at all stages to try and obtain feedback from users on how we should be improving the service, and then taking action using a continual service improvement approach to address concerns. There are various different routes to provide feedback, and they'll become clear as the service develops. But for example, I mentioned feedback can be gained through the service desk from queries. There will also be user satisfaction surveys, regular user satisfaction surveys. And in order to incentivize people to submit, we will be offering, we will be making a contribution to a charity if people submit their surveys. There'll be a feedback form on the website if people wish to offer feedback. You can feedback directly to UKRI. And of course, there'll be various user groups and user meetings, such as the Scientific Advisory Committee, who will be able to take input from you and feed in. I also mentioned community events. There'll be a range of community events, and their team will be active in these communities. So, for example, we'll be regularly attending EPCC champions and looking for any input. More broadly, we're looking to engage widely with users within the ARCHER2 service. So we'll be engaging with users through the service desk and through service emails. But we're also introducing an electronic newsletter, which will tell you about what's going on around the service. For example, what training courses are going on, when the next eCSE call is, but also highlights from the service, such as scientific highlights. There will be a Twitter, well, there is a Twitter feed now. There'll be a series of blog articles to help explaining what's going on in the system, and we have a YouTube channel, which is where things like training courses and other relevant bits of information will go. There'll be an annual user survey to engage with users. Hopefully something that we'll never have to use, but it will be there as a formal complaints procedure should somebody have a grievance. We've also introduced in ARCHER2 a CSE steering group. So this will be a representative set of users who will provide guidance around where we're going on the service and changes we should consider. We have a series of consortium contacts. These are individuals within the support team who are a direct contact with each of the large consortia, whether that be an EPSRC or NERC consortia. And the idea here is that they will act as an advocate for these consortia. They'll have a better understanding of the needs of a particular consortia. I've mentioned champions already, and we have something called technical mini projects, which I will explain later on. There's also an emphasis in the training on doing collaborative training where appropriate, so working with groups around the UK to provide joint training sessions. Virtual tutorials and webinars are important, and I've already mentioned that we'll be running these weekly throughout the summer, or up to the start of the summer, and we'll review from there. We've introduced something called an expert callback service. So one of the things we felt would be of value to users is that when you maybe have a query or want some help, you can book a chat with one of our experts. So communication doesn't all need to be done by email. You can have a chat and a discussion with one of our experts to see if they can help solve any problems. We've introduced something called the virtual ARCHER2 user group meeting. Now, we used to have user group meetings in some of the earlier services, and we felt this would be something of value to bring back. So the idea here is that all the users will be invited to attend, and they can input on potential changes. We can better understand user requirements, we can gain feedback, but it can also be a way for users to share knowledge and share best practice around the service. We're also going to hold an annual UK Leadership Computing Symposium. So this will be a flagship event for the UK, and the idea is that we will highlight and publicise the research that's going on the ARCHER2 system. Okay, and I should mention the website at this point in time. Now, the website is already up and running. If you go to archer2.ac.uk, you'll be able to see what's there. And over the lifetime of the service, you'll be able to access information about things like the status of the hardware, what outages are coming up, but also information about when the next eCSE call is due and some of the guidance around eCSEs. There'll be all the important user documentation there to help you get onto the system. All the different service policies. Now, the service policies are already available, helping guide how we run the system. And there'll be information about training courses. Outreach, there is a commitment to carry out significant outreach around ARCHER2, and I'll talk about that later on, but that also will appear on the website. So those slides there cover the majority of what's called the service provision part of ARCHER2, and the next set of slides will cover what's called CSE support, or Computational Science and Engineering support. Now, this support is divided up into a series of what are termed functions, a grouping, and it covers all the range of the CSE service. So we have a separate CSE service desk, although you as a user will never see the difference between the different service desks. It's one coherent service. But CSE will be manning and operating and checking all the CSE relevant queries. There's a technical operations aspect, which I'll talk about later, and an in-depth support function. There's a function that's responsible for delivering the eCSE, and there's a function that's responsible for delivering training. There's a function that's responsible for delivering outreach, And then there's a component that's involved in delivering impact and benefits realisation. So this is demonstrating the value and success of the service, which is essential for ensuring that we're able to gain funding for a service beyond ARCHER2. So before going through the different functions, it is worth summarising core values of the service. And this arranges around quality, providing the best quality support service we can, using skilled people. The service should be available and timely. So, when you submit a query, you should get a good response, and the service should be available to you. There should be a coherent approach to all the different aspects of the service. And we want people providing the service to be approachable and accessible and inclusive. So there shouldn't be barriers to different people accessing the service. We want to be flexible and responsive to users' needs and be able to adapt to these. Okay, so there is the CSE service desk. This is fully integrated with the SP service desk. It will handle and monitor all queries relating to the CSE side of things. So, for example, queries relating to problems with your application code will end here. And it will also handle things like technical assessments. Beyond this, we have technical operations. Now, this is responsible for ensuring that the programming environment on ARCHER2 is relevant for users, so a rich programming environment. And by this I mean we're looking at the porting and optimizing of all the relevant tools, support tools, libraries, and key application codes, so that they're all available for users. And this function is also responsible for ensuring that there's a high level, that all the documentation is available. So things like user guides, FAQs, that kind of information. On top of that we have a function called the in-depth support function. And this is a function that provides direct access to the CSE team. So users can directly access the expertise of the CSE team. There's a range of different support options here. We have a commitment to produce a series of mini projects. Now these will use technical effort from the CSE team. There'll be short technical projects designed around supporting the use of ARCHER2. So again, driven by user need, we might, for example, be looking at new tools, investigating whether a new tool is appropriate for the service, or we might be looking at future-proofing applications. What's the next sort of technologies coming along? So technical projects that are relevant to the community. We'll have a series of technical webinars which will cover topics of interest to the community, and again we seek input from the community on what they would like. Consortium contacts I've already mentioned. We've introduced a concept of an application performance health check. So here a user can request that the ARCHER staff investigate the performance of their application and feedback on possible improvements. We see this maybe being particularly helpful to people preparing eCSE applications who are unsure as to the current performance of their code. There will also be virtual consultancy sessions. So again, similar to the sessions I mentioned before, you can request to speak to a technical member of staff and they'll have a chat with you on the phone to discuss what problems you have and how we can support you. So moving on to the eCSE programme, for those that haven't come across the eCSE, there is significant funding under ARCHER2 dedicated to funding RSE staff embedded within their research communities. So this isn't funding for the centralised CSE team, this is for individuals embedded within the research communities across the UK. And the aim is to develop the UK software base to benefit the use of ARCHER2, so to enhance the benefit of ARCHER2 to UK science. So we're looking at improvements to the software running on ARCHER2. There are a series of core values associated with the eCSE, those being openness, that we'll try and be as open and transparent as possible when running the eCSE programme. It will be independent, so it's run through a series of calls and there'll be an independent scientific panel that will select the proposals, and not for profit, and I'll explain that in the next slide. So funding will be allocated using an open, fair and peer-reviewed funding programme. There will be regular calls, there'll be 3 every year, and people will be able to apply for these calls. The funding model we will use is EPSRC's standard 80% FEC rate. So for the majority of people applying, you'll simply need to get a fairly standard costing through your university. For the small number of people that don't have access to the FEC costing model, there'll be a similar process for you. So EPCC is committed to providing an average of 12 FTEs per year of eCSE support, based on the 80% FEC costing model. So that's a minimum. However, we have a fixed budget for this, and any leftover funding will be used to provide additional eCSE staffing. It will not be used, it won't be profit. It's not for profit. It will be put straight back into the eCSE programme. The first call is due to open on the 19th of May. Technical evaluations will be due by the 16th of June, and the first call will close on the 7th of July. The aim here is, while the ARCHER2 hardware isn't in place, we can be doing the evaluation of proposals so as that projects are able to be up and running on ARCHER2 as soon as the hardware arrives. Around the eCSE, we have put in place a strong support system to try and support users throughout the life cycle of the eCSE. So right from when you have an idea around an eCSE all the way through to the final reporting of a successful eCSE, there will be support in place for you. We will run a series of you can access virtual consultancy sessions all the way through, whether that might be to discuss an idea that you have, or whether you need some support getting up and running, or you want to discuss something midway through the project, or if you want support near the end of the project in writing up. There'll be virtual tutorials and workshops around how to submit an eCSE, and the application health check may be useful here for some projects to try and provide a baseline performance for their applications. Every successful eCSE project will be given an eCSE contact who will work with them throughout the duration of their eCSE. If an eCSE is unsuccessful, you'll be able to access, again, support from the eCSE team. There'll be a virtual consultancy session on offer where we can take you through the feedback from the panel and try and support you in addressing some of the concerns. And so the primary aim here is to ensure that there is support throughout the life cycle of an eCSE. So one of the things that we've put in place for ARCHER2 is to recognise that users need a spectrum of support. So they'll need support. The support may range from simply a query with a relatively small amount of work, through to the need for a technical mini project, through to what we're terming a lightweight eCSE, through to a full eCSE. Now the first call has standard eCSEs, but in future we will introduce something called a lightweight eCSE. One of the things we found last time was that for people who are looking for a small project to be carried out, maybe 2 to 3 months of effort, the overhead of submitting a full eCSE proposal was quite significant. So the aim of a lightweight eCSE is for small projects to be able to submit a lighter weight proposal and for the review process to be lighter weight. So there is a spectrum of support available to users within ARCHER2. In terms of training, our aim is to provide a rich and diverse training programme that again is flexible and evolves with the user's needs. So a couple of things to note. We have different types of training track. Now, some will be aimed at researchers and some at RSE developers. I think this recognises that we have different types of users on the system, and while some will be interested in performance optimization type courses, others are researchers utilising large packages and would be more interested in a course aimed at their particular package. So we'll have different tracks depending on the type of user involved. We are working on improving the accessibility and inclusivity of HPC training. So that's around, we have a robust process in place already to try and ensure that our slides are as accessible as possible, that the facilities we use are accessible, but also we're looking at the way we provide training to ensure it's as inclusive as possible so as many people as possible can access training. So for example, using different mechanisms for delivery, using a mix of online and physical courses. We'll be looking for the programme to be flexible and respond to users' needs. So we've introduced two things here. There will be a training panel which will guide the training courses that we provide, but also a more broadly open user training forum where users can join and provide input around training. We'll be looking to do collaboration, to do collaborative training with the community where appropriate, and we'll be looking to provide international recognised leadership in HPC and data science training. So as I said already, we'll be using different delivery mechanisms and we'll be looking around ensuring our subject areas are diverse. And finally, the training programme will be open to all UK researchers. So this diagram just gives you an overview of the idea behind the different training tracks. You'll not be confined to a particular track. You can access whichever courses you like, but there is a clear pathway through for different groups as to what sort of training is available. So for example, we'll have courses around package use on ARCHER2 or how to develop applications on ARCHER2. In terms of outreach, there's a significant programme of outreach associated with the ARCHER2 service, and our aim is to provide something that is engaging and innovative. There are two focuses within ARCHER2. One is on an outreach activity programme aimed at young people, so aimed at school children, trying to encourage them to consider careers in computational science, and also to try and explain the relevance and benefit of high-performance computing. Alongside this, there is also a track around engaging adults and lifelong learning, again with an emphasis on why is supercomputing relevant to the community. Giving you a couple of example activities, we're going to attend a series of science festivals and schools around the UK. We're going to have a supercomputing online award scheme. There'll be a competition for early career researchers, and if they're successful, if they win the competition, we'll support them to develop their own outreach materials and to present them. There'll be online courses aimed at lifelong learners, and there'll be a whole series of enhanced resources. So the picture here shows ARCHE, which has been very successful in terms of outreach for ARCHER, and we'll be developing more resources in this area. One of the things that the COVID-19 has done is it has significantly impacted on our ability to go to science festivals. So at the moment, we're focusing our efforts around online resources, as many other organisations are as well, to try and support people during lockdown. So my final slide talks about diversity, inclusion and accessibility. This is really important within the context of ARCHER2. It's central to everything we do within the service. So there's a diversity and inclusion policy, which is available on the website just now and is something we will be working to follow throughout the service. There's a diversity and inclusion group whose role will be to review and reflect and identify any barriers to diversity and inclusion in the service. We also plan to have a round table every year associated with our user group meeting where people can input, anybody can input here. And there'll be a series of equality and impact assessments carried out for changes to the service. There's a series of activities around celebrating diversity. So, for example, the Women in HPC initiative, the Faces of HPC initiative. And in terms of accessibility, I've mentioned this in terms of training material, but we'll also be trying to ensure that any documentation and the website is developed with accessibility, and this will be regularly reviewed. Okay, so as I say, that's a quick overview or summary of our plans for the ARCHER2 service, how we plan to support users. We will go into more depth in the next few webinars, but I think it is worth saying that we're really pleased to have won the ARCHER2 contracts, but we're excited to be running ARCHER2 and honoured that we've been selected to do this. So it is really important. We've put in place a whole series of activities designed to ensure that the support service is flexible and responsive to users' needs, and that we take users' feedback on board and continuously improve the service. And ultimately, the service and all the service support is there to support users to deliver the best possible science on the system, to keep delivering world-class science around ARCHER and ARCHER2. And I think that's me. So I would just ask if anybody has any questions now. You can either unmute and speak, or you can put something in the chat. Hi, Grenville.
Hello, it's Grenville here.
Hi, Grenville.
I just had a question. I put it in the chat, but I don't know exactly where it went. So I just wondered what the status of SAFE would be on the new machine. Will it just be a complete blank with nothing in it? It'll just be completely empty. Will it carry over any of the information that's currently in there? For example, about the budget information.
So my understanding is that will be carried over, but so, that isn't my. Alan, is that you?
I can comment on that a little bit. Yes, I mean, there is significant rework going on in SAFE, but it will maintain the same database. It'll be an extension of that. So whether budgets carry over is a question for people like, or for the UKRI, NERC and EPCC, exactly what they carry over. And when we are developing this SAFE for ARCHER2, but it's very much an extension of the SAFE for ARCHER, an enhancement.
Okay, thanks. I was just wondering whether how much data entry there's going to be, but maybe that's not a question for you, Alan. Okay, thanks.
I don't think there's going to be a lot of data entry for PIs or managers. You know, individuals who've been accredited to a consortium or research group will be able to apply or get access to ARCHER2, providing their research group or consortium has.
Yeah, okay, thanks. Thank you.
But there's also, because it's all done with the database, if there's specific questions or ways that we can deal with specific consortia, we're very happy to do that.
Okay, I think somebody else came on as well. So
there is a question in chat as well, which I can read out. Will AUs match, or will there be a conversion if one has any left over from ARCHER?
Okay, so this is a question for UKRI. However, I can say that they are looking to do a conversion. I think they're looking to change the name from allocation unit.
But it's going to be a simple conversion.
Yes, it will be.
That was a question from Mark Richardson. Thank you, Mark.
Okay, is there any further questions? No? Okay. Well, I will just thank everybody for joining. It was great to see so many people tuning in to hear about ARCHER2, and please come back next week if you'd like to know more about the hardware. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Lorna.
Bye
Bye-bye.
now. Bye.